to. Oh, okay. It's there, but Katie, am I blurry on your end?
No.
Oh, okay. When I pulled it up on Facebook, I looked a little blurry. Okay. Let me just make sure this is squared away. Okay. We can get started. Hello, everyone who's watching, whether you end up watching live or the replay. I'm really excited about doing this live with you, Katie. And I know a lot of people, because we're so like immersed in like a smaller community of like the big broad Facebook world. But so I think a lot of my friends already know you because we're mutual friends. But I would love to just, before we dive into anything we're going to talk about today, I just want to introduce you and let you introduce yourself a bit. Katie came into my world through a mentor of ours, and we were in like a little Podlet group together. And you and I, we've just gotten really deeply connected on the topic of what I've titled this live, like the magic of the mundane, just through like friend to friend conversations about what was really working me in my life, in my home, the conversation of presence, and we'll dive in more to that. But this whole conversation just started as that, like a conversation, and us being able to go back and forth and share examples about the nuanced ways of how this was really working us in our lives. I'm really thankful to have you invited in that conversation and excited to dive in more in about this today. But you can introduce yourself if there's anything else you feel like you want to share specifically.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is what I've really appreciated about our conversations is how much they have brought my attention to what's right in front of me, where I can kind of channel the frequency of Katie, the heart energy I carry, into a space and to focus on the like what my eyeballs can see and what my hands can touch, which has been such a reprieve from all the things going on in the world and like the changes I need to see in my life. So the friendship with you and like just who you are and how you are, and then the conversations we've gotten to be in have been such a gift over these last few months. And I'm really, really excited to actually be kind of deciding to contain this and hold a space for others to come in and touch in on this with us.
I love that you mentioned what your eyes can see, what your hands can touch. And that'll kind of let me lead into this, because what it had me consider is every time you and I and others would get together and we would start with a prayer, how I would generally like deepen into our time together would be noticing where we're sitting. And I even just invite this for whoever's watching, just to even take like a moment, a millisecond, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, to just become aware of where your feet are on the ground, where you're sitting, the surroundings in your home, wherever you're at, if you're not at home, whatever is around you, to like actually come into being in this moment and to become aware of how you're being held by life. There's a further extended conversation that I'm not going to go into today, but I'm going to name it because it's what brought me here. And it's the conversation of masculine provision. And Katie, you and I haven't even really talked a ton about like particularly masculine provision, men and money, women and money, but that's how I was kind of brought into the deeper perspectives of this conversation of presence, the mundane, and how we relate to what's occurring in our lives, in the nuanced of ways, in the more grandiose of ways. And when I say what's happening in our lives, I do say that really broadly. Like, I think it could feel a little bit like, okay, what do you mean? And it could mean anything. Like, it could be in the context of any intimate relationship in your life, like partnerships, parents, children, friendships. It can mean the way we relate to the plants in our home. It can mean the way we relate to our animals, to strangers, to the nature outside our windows. And it can also be like when we're driving in a car, like it's all the little nuanced of ways of like what's happening in life. And the reason I touch on it is because through this conversation of masculine provision, I was brought into an opportunity to really be at one with how I related to everything around me. And for me, initially, that looked like just a lot of nuanced chaos that could go easily like under the rug. Like, it was really easy not to notice that it was nuanced chaos, because I think when most people consider chaos, it is like a more grandiose life experience, like something traumatic or big happens in life. But that wasn't necessarily the case. And it's not always the case. It's often just how we're moving through our lives. So I'll go into that more. But what I'm going to start this conversation with is Katie and I begin to speak about the presence we invite into our homes. And the reason being is I think that until we let ourselves bring awareness in the simplistic of ways, like if we're trying too hard to go to the complex and fixing and changing, we're avoiding the thing. So we really started with the most simple place we could land was, how do we walk through our homes? How do we move through our home? And this conversation started about a month ago. And I remember when it started, and like very immediately, we both were like, oh my God, this is a big experience just to bring awareness in how we move through our homes. I want to pause. Do you want to add to what I've
I do.
began with? Okay.
Really quickly, yes, you've already triggered so many thoughts. So let me pull in the ones that want to come through. Um, when we started this conversation and I started paying attention to it, it was the nuanced chaos. That's what I want to bring in. I noticed how much I was, a couple of things, rushing and like noticing my body movements and how allowing my body to do the thing. Like, again, this morning I whipped open my dishwasher, and my dishwasher is kind of like, it's weird. I get at it from a weird angle. It it wants to stick anyway. So like, I kind of have to put force into it, but I'm hyper aware of how much I hate opening my dishwasher now because I have to go into that kind of movement. Which tells me like, maybe I should actually move my body differently in relationship to my dishwasher so I don't have to bring that upon myself every time. But the nuanced chaos, it's like for me, how often I kind of whip through a space I'm in because I'm focused on like, what's the thing I'm doing or what's the next thing I got to do rather than, and I love how you say, like, you start to connect the dots for me for there's a provision right here, right now, in these walls, in this floor, on this table. Like, I'm being held. I'm being held in a space of my own making. And there might be things that like aren't great about it right now, but it's a space I've made. I've got to be grateful for that. I've got to appreciate there is a thing to receive here right now. And it's that I can literally stop and, like what you just said, take 10 seconds, drop in, breathe a few breaths, and I'm back in a space where I can receive the provision of this one beautiful life. It doesn't even have to be about the things around me. And so I think this practice we've started playing with, noticing how we move through our homes, is really bringing me into noticing I can bring so much more peace than I've ever thought I could bring just by paying attention to how I'm moving through the spaces I'm in. That extends to the grocery store. I hate grocery shopping. That extends to the grocery store. That extends to this morning I was vacuuming and I usually like whip around. I don't like vacuuming. And it was like, slow down. I had a lot of stuff. Like I was replacing, long story short, I had a lot of little things I knew were in the carpet. I needed to slow down. So the I needed to go over it 4 different times. So like this slowing down, the subtler movements, like I can breathe peace, calm, serenity into the space. And when I do that, magical things do tend to happen.
Mm,
Teeny tiny magical things. And then also it makes room. I'm noticing there's like a momentum building of bigger magical things happening.
hmm I love that so much that you brought right into like the example of whipping open your dishwasher. When we first started talking about that, I was noticing like whipping open cabinets and like shutting doors really hard. And like, what was the other one we were talking about? Like how we stomp on our feet really hard when we walk.
Like plodding through the
Yes,
house.
yes. Oh my goodness. So okay, as you were talking, Katie, what I remembered is when you and I first started having one-on-one conversations, one of the very first things we talked about was, I mean, like I was sharing you some of like my life experience of the last few years, but it landed us in the conversation of like, I'm trying to think of the right best way to say this, female empowerment, female CEO, like I've talked about this a lot in a few different writing posts and my experience of that, my perspective, how life handed me a set of cards that I didn't expect. And they were so beautiful. But in moments, because I expected something different, when we expect something different than what is, there is no beauty. And so I got slapped in the face with that a lot of just like reality will just rear its head on us with the recognition that when we have a different expectation than what is now, we're creating our own chaos. And that's really what this grounded into. And the reason I brought up the piece about where we started off this conversation on like female CEO and female empowerment was now I want to preface this conversation with like, there's exceptions to this, and every single person's experience of this is so different. But broadly, I think for many women, we went through a time of not even knowing what foot we were stepping on in chasing to become someone in our lives that we didn't know was like pushing away the thing that we actually wanted. And for me, what that was like trying to prove to myself that I could be everything that I could be to like make it look good on the outside. Meanwhile, on the inside, all this controlling and planning was like killing me internally. And so if I dive into the deeper conversation around why I would want to put focus on how we move through our homes is because if we're only ever focusing on like the external logistics of like our titles and our roles and who we think we are to everyone else without ever like coming into the present moment of like who we actually are, because there's a huge difference. There was a stark contrast for me of like, I go into meditation and meditation is really beautiful. And I have these beautiful envisionments of like who my God self is and like who I really am at the core, like who I was birthed to be. And it's so powerful and it's so brilliant and it's so wonderful. And I love her. And then I go into my everyday life and I'm like, oh God, like there is a polar opposite. Who this is in my meditation is not who this person is that I'm being. But I would never have that information without providing myself the opportunity to see the difference. And so this practice is so simple that I think most people will choose not to partake because it seems like it's not the way. It's a lot easier to look for the complex, to look for a quick fix, to look into like the stories of why what is bad or wrong. And where, Katie, you and I will dive a bit more into this in the actual devotional practice. But the very first and most important thing that comes with becoming aware of who we're being is that that awareness is met with love. Kind of like how you and I, like, as we're discussing this and you like share slamming open the dishwasher and like stomping through our homes and we're laughing because we can see that version of ourselves and we can witness it and we can be okay with what is. And that's where transformation begins.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I've got a couple of things floating, but like something that just came through that's so powerful is because of the simplicity of there's no task to do. Noticing is the only thing we're doing, and noticing one thing, how you move through your house. What I you speaking to that, what it's bringing through for me is like it's so simple, it's easy to catch. It's easy to feel like when something feels good and something's like off.
Mhm.
The next thing is when something's off and I catch it, it's like I immediately know what's happening. I'm rushed or I'm focused on getting a thing done rather than being present or, a myriad of things. And in the moment where I catch myself, because now I'm attuned to something very simple that is either good, like feels good or doesn't feel good in my body, I am presented with this micro moment of forgiveness. Like I can forgive myself for that. I can have compassion for myself in this moment. And it's not a big ordeal. Like it's not, it's just like, take a deep breath and shift. There's nothing different to do other than drop in and shift. And it's like a micro version of what you were talking about. Like I have this self identity that's trying to like do big things in the world. I resonate with that so much. I have been through that journey too. Like, oh, now there's this version of me, like I get to be a little softer with how I bring myself through and it
Mhm.
meets the reality I'm in and reality stops whipping me around, trying to like smack me down. Like, no, listen, I'm trying to get you to be
Mhm.
you, not this vision of you that you are. I'll speak for myself that you are delusionally holding.
Mm. Mhm.
So the practice of it's a micro practice of forgiveness, of compassion, like self-compassion,
I love
self-forgiveness,
that.
bringing love to yourself first. And then, like, what I'm noticing is my attention is then shifting into, I just want to fill my space with that, then fill my space.
Mhm.
Like, there's not even anybody there. Like, fill my space with love. All of a sudden, the way my house feels is it's cozy, it's warm, like, it's not rigid and things need to be done and things are out of place. And the other piece I want to name here is for in my relationship to the world of like masculine and feminine dynamics and how does that come through in provision and like all the ways. Um a lot of what in the past has triggered me as I learned into living into all of that. It was always like I was focused on something in my external world because I was told that like, oh, like be with men like this, be yourself out there like this. And there was this external focus. This practice is so simple. I wouldn't have to know anything about masculine, feminine, whatever. I just get to be. It's a practice of noticing how I'm being. And it's like the next thing I notice outside of myself is my home and then receiving from just what's around me, receiving from the shift in energy when I bring myself to the present moment and like soften.
Mhm.
So for me, like earlier you mentioned, like we could totally go into like provisional dynamics of the masculine, like we don't need to.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be no lecturing on that. There might be some noticing we share, but there's not going to be, we're not bringing those dynamics as kind of an intellectual component. We're just in
Mm.
the practice of receiving from what's around us and kind of pouring into what's around us from us being in our heart space, us being in the present moment. So for me, like this has been so powerful these last few weeks with you. It's really making a lot of those principles I've learned over the last number of years come alive because I am becoming feelable to myself. I am receiving from myself. I am learning how to be in myself. And then everything is just kind of like that re-architecting within myself is re-architecting what happens. There's an unfolding and a becoming in my spaces, in my life, because of I'm just noticing what's happening in me through such a beautifully simple process and practice. That's the glory of it. So if this, I agree with you. I think people might be like, that's too simple. How is that going to shift anything? And it's like, maybe consider you've been too hard on yourself and forcing yourself through, I won't say it that way. Believing that the complexity and that you have to do hard things to make shifts is the illusion. The in the presence is where it's at.
Oh my gosh. I love that this conversation started with you, Katie. It's like the way it's weaved together through our lives has been so wonderful. When what you said about like micro practice of forgiveness, that was like perfectly encompassing of what this is. And so just to name, like Katie and I met through masculine, feminine teachings. And in order for us to integrate at the full level we knew was necessary, was this process. This was necessary, was to remove the complexity, allow the simplicity of just what is, like being with what is. And I firmly believe that we don't actually have the opportunity to create change unless we are one with what is. And that in and of itself is what allows for change. And so the way I've kind of explained it in writing is whatever we're like envisioning in a meditative state, like the way I think of it is like Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and how you like go into a meditative state to create change. But there's another part of his work that talks about remembering who you no longer want to be. And how I've been able to do that is just by seeing that person, like that reality, without all of this like muckiness covering it. And so the way to and the way through is it's not by needing all of these extra pieces of figuring out and trying. Like that's the difference between force and power that Dr. David Hawkins talks about. I don't want to get too far into any of that. I'm going into directions that are
So
not
juicy.
necessary. But and that brings me to like, Katie, you named this before we got live was, so I'll just name, we're going to be doing a 40-day devotional practice together, her and I, whether other people join us or not, we're doing it. And this was not planned. Like Katie and I didn't get together and be like, what kind of practice can we start together? It was like, what's being present in our lives? And then it kind of led into this, what about a 40-day devotional? And when you had asked me like what the presencing of it would be, I remember it feeling it so clear that the whole entire devotional is about how we move through our homes and having a moment of like, oh God, that is so simple. Are we sure? And you know, like when you asked me, so it was like, that's what we're starting with. I was like, yeah, that's where we're going to start is how do we move through our homes? Because kind of how you were touching on, like, you know, this is so simple. It almost is like, that can't be the way. What I have found is for a lot of people on like the transformational path, there comes to a point where it's like, it's so close that it's so easy to miss. Like it's right in front of your nose and you're like, I can't, I'm looking over there. It's like right here. And we're like, I can't see it. Like I'm looking outside of my home when it's my home is telling me exactly what's true. And I'm like, no. Let me go look out there and ask all these other people and like hire another mentor, take another course. No, like for me, like just to be frank, it was like time to cut all that bullshit and just to make it as easy as I can, because it was actually more uncomfortable for me. This won't be for everyone, but for me, it was more uncomfortable to sit with the simplicity of what is than to go seek out an answer in complexity. And I think that's kind of like the nuance of like this human experience. So I'm kind of pulling back to the spot of inviting others into this devotional practice with us, where we're going to spend, I would say the next 40 days, but we're starting in 10 days. So starting in 10 days, we'll be spending the next 40 days with this intention, with the intention of noticing and presencing the awareness of who we are being in our closest intimate life. So not necessarily who we're being on a public screen, not necessarily like who we're being when we maneuver out in the world, that is affected, but starting in the most intimate place, who we are being in our most intimate spot, the place where we can kick our shoes off and not have to worry about what we look like, how we sound, where we can be our most authentic, like who is that person? And coming into honesty, like just coming into integrity with that, and letting what wants to unfold from that unfold, which I will not name for you. I will not even name it for myself. That's a part of the mystery. That's a part of the evolving and transformation, is we're not planning the outcome. We're not planning or deciding preconceived notions of what this means about our future. We're allowing that to unfold.
I want to name one more thing. What has been so beautiful in the last few weeks with you, to speak to the mystery part of it, is instead of like trying to change and looking for the result of that change and focusing on what I need to change and what I need to do differently, this practice and our conversations have put me in a posture of being in a relationship with my environment, like what wants to be revealed, what is trying to reveal itself to me, which puts me in a posture of receiving and paying attention, and like automatically being in a posture of waiting for something to be revealed, being expectant about that. I can't, like, I'm either in that or I'm in trying to like impose myself or control things on the environment. And it feels, to my system, it feels so good. Like, I love my relationship with mystery, and I have loved this practice in continually bringing me back in the easiest, most accessible way to be in relationship with mystery.
Oh, to be in relationship with mystery. Yes. Yeah. I'm glad we kind of landed in that mystery piece, because that's the beauty of this, is not getting to know how it ends up, and like letting that be the beautiful part, not the part that's like so daunting and frightening. And it might feel that way at times if we are someone, me, who lived more of a life of like controlling and planning and being like, this feels safe, this feels good, I know what's going to happen. And then it just kind of kills everything that we actually want. So I'm so excited to open this as like a container for others to join us, Katie, as we move through this. Like, just to be transparent again, Katie and I are going through this journey with whoever joins us. It's a completely free invitation. The only thing that it costs you is your commitment to doing so, to showing up and being present in your life. It's not asking you to do any more. This isn't a bunch of course modules and like it's none of that. We will be having live calls to discuss and presence and like have conversations. And there will be like steps and journeys along the way, so that we're actually moving through the process. But I just want to make sure that, you know, Katie and I have really intended to be super clear that the only way this actually works is if, when we become the only way presence happens is becoming one with what is, without story. And why that matters is because we we wouldn't be inviting ourselves into that opportunity if we didn't realize just how detrimental being with what is with story was. So that's the like short, brief, detailed version of what I want to share about this is, because this is the first time we've ever done this. I'm just going to be really honest and open about it. We've never done this before, which is why we're opening up to people to be like, do it with us, go on the journey with us. Let's see what happens. We're not sure, but we're excited about doing it. And we would love to have others join in that experience as well. The other thing I will name is that I have some writing pieces that I have been working on over the past year that have felt just more intricately private, that I have not felt right about sharing out like on a public platform. And so think I'm going to be allowing some of those to flow through this as examples of what this has shown up in my life as. And it'll also be an opportunity for others to be in tune with their creativity, to come to see what comes through in that experience and that timing. So I did want to name that, as this is also an invitation to come into like closer relationship with some of the writing pieces I have been giving out, and furthering parts of them. Like if you would like to read into deeper parts, this is an opportunity to do so inside of the Facebook group that we will open. The Facebook group will open a few days before we begin. So I think it's a Monday, right? December 11th. So the Facebook group will probably open the Friday before, so a week from today, and it'll close the end of the day on Monday. So we will end up closing it. Like we won't leave it open because we want to keep it like the intimacy integral. Like we want to make sure we respect each person who joins in this with us, as there is some intimacy that comes through. So those are the details that I have. Did I miss anything?
The other thing all presents is we debated on, should we do this where the practice lands over the holidays or wait until
Oh,
after
I
the
didn't even think
holidays?
about that. Yes, yes,
And
yes,
we
yes.
made a really deliberate decision. No, we're going to start this so that, the holidays can be a really stressful time. So we like, what a more perfect environment to practice feeling yourself, paying attention to how you're walking through your home, your environment by yourself in your private moments, with the hosting and attending the holiday things. So we thought, a lot of people avoid the holidays for launching things like this. And it's like, oh my God, this is such a fertile playground for this kind of thing to emerge in. So, if kind of the holiday craze, if this feels like one more thing on top of it, just know this is our intention is, our hope is, my hypothesis for myself is this is actually going to bring a lot more peace through all of the moments that in past years may have felt stressful or chaotic.
Yes, I'm so glad you named that, because that was an important part of this. When Katie had asked me if I wanted to start before or after, I think I pretty immediately knew that I wanted to do this through the holidays, because I remembered over the years having practices to kind of ground in through what's brought into our lives as chaos. Like we didn't intentionally bring in the holidays, they've been here.
Knew they were coming.
Yeah, like let's create some opportunities for ourselves to go through that with more invited beauty. So, and if to you it feels like one more thing, totally get it, but it's actually intended to provide you the opposite. So it like removes that pressure off of having just another thing. That's not what this is about. But again, this is completely free. And so my ask is that if you choose to commit to this, is that you're fully committed in yourself of like what this is inviting you into. And I would say even maybe spend the next week before we open the group. You can already start. Like you can start, like it's kind of hard not to start once the question is there of noticing. But to deepen into the question with yourself, whether that just be through journaling or being aware of what you specifically and individually and uniquely are being called into through this experience. So that's what I would have.
Again, just to name like our meta question we're holding when Courtney refers to the question, it's how are you walking? How are you moving through your house? That's the simplest place that we're drawing our attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be a really beautiful journey to go on, especially this time of year. If I don't have your email already, make sure that you get that to me. You can just direct message me your email where I'll be sending out the more specific details of when live calls are happening, and where the Facebook group will be shared a week from today. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments of this video, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I think this was pretty straightforward. Hopefully I'm not missing anything that we discussed, Katie.
I just as a way of kind of wrapping us up, we jumped on here with the intention of like chatting about this for 10 minutes and like it's just a testament of how juicy this practice is that we just spent what 30 minutes? I don't know when we hit live, but
I have
like
no
20,
idea.
30 minutes talking
Mhm.
about this. It's so rich. So I'm really looking forward to being in this practice with you, Courtney, and for whoever else joins us along this journey into mystery.
Juicy, rich, mystery. These are some great encompassing words. Yeah. I'm excited. And thank you, Katie, so much for going on this journey with me. I look forward to seeing what unfolds. And I look forward to seeing all of you who join us in the group. This is going to be a really, really beautiful time. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.